Hello, coders. This is Mr. Tauser, Mr. T, and we're going to look a little bit more at making cheese chasing scratch. If you've been following along, you know this is part 4. I think after this one, we're going to have one more to do, and then the game, I'm going to finish with the next one. But in case you forgot, or in case you haven't been watching, excuse me, this is the game that we've created so far. We created a maze, we got a mouse here, we got a ghost that chases the mouse, and the mouse, if you push the directional buttons, it chases the cheese, and whenever it touches the cheese, it gets 10 points, and then cheese moves. I'm going to play real quick. We got some cool music. Remember, we can't go, after last week, we can't go through the purple lines anymore. The ghost is going to chase us, and the ghost only stays visible for a little while. And sometimes it's better to avoid the ghost for a little bit till it goes away. Alright, so that's that. That's what we got so far. So I'm going to add a couple things to this. You may remember, if you saw part 3, that when we made the maze doesn't cover the entire screen. So it is possible for the cheese to, the way it's set up right now, for the cheese to end up outside outside the box, which is not good, because if the cheese is out, like if the cheese is right here and the mouse can't get to it, then it can't get to the cheese and it's not going to get any points. So we need to make a change so the cheese always stays inside the box. I'm going to show you how to do that. It's going to take a little bit of experimentation, a little bit of trial and error. Second thing, I'm going to make the cheese smaller, because for me the cheese is just a little bit too big. And then the third thing, we're going to add another enemy that stops the mouse, and it's going to be a beetle. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to start off by going to the cheese, and first is the easy thing. We're going to make it smaller. Okay, so this is the code that we've done for the cheese, and we set it up to be, this was the original size of the cheese. I don't, if you saw part 2, I think, maybe part 1 even, we made the cheese in part 1, and it's this size. And so what I can do is, to make it even smaller, I can say when the green flag is clicked, we're going to set the size of the cheese. This is the cheese we're messing with. We're going to set to 20%. So it's only going to be 20% of the size. I'm going to show you how that looks here. See how small it is there? I like that size. Personally, there's not a requirement you have to make it that size, but that seems to be a good size to me. If you want to make it bigger, all you have to do is change this number to a bigger number, so it's a bigger percentage of the original size. Okay, so that's pretty easy. We're going to save that. The next thing I want to do is, I talked about the issue of if the cheese were to go, right now it's designed here with this code to go to a random spot. Okay, and what happens is when the mouse touches the cheese goes to a random spot somewhere between negative 220 and positive 220 on the x-axis. And I talked about this a little bit. I'm going to do it again, because basically this screen here is a giant, it's a grid, and it's numbered in the computer's mind. It starts here at negative, going from left to right, it starts at negative 220 and it goes to positive 220. So it's like a big giant number line. So what will happen is, the computer, when the mouse hits the cheese first picks a random spot between here and here, and it will also pick, we scroll over a little bit, a random spot. This is positive 160 and this is negative 160. It's going to pick a random spot on this way too, and it's going to go there. Okay, so if I were to say my X is 10 and my Y is 10, okay, and the very middle is 0, 0. So if I go up 10 spaces, they're really small spaces. You have to think there's 160 spaces from here to here, so it's a little small. But if it goes 10 and 10, random 10, 10 is going to be about right there. Okay, so what I need to do is make sure that the cheese doesn't go in this space over here, which is going to be the higher numbers on the x-axis. So I think if I change it to like the randomizer, it's only going to go up to 200 on the x-axis, and then I don't want it to go up here either in this space. So we're going to say another random number. Instead of going to 160, it's only going to go to about 140. Okay, so I changed it just a little bit. I'm going to save it, and then we're going to put it up here, and we're going to run. Now it's alright if it's in the purple line, because you'll see, yeah, the mouse can still hit it if it's in the purple line. Oh, there the ghost caught me. Okay, but there, you know, we'll see that we play for a little bit. So here we're just testing, and it seems like doing that, playing at the cheese. Okay, the cheese, with that adjustment, I think we're all right, that the cheese isn't going to go where the mouse can't get it. It's like if you're playing foosball and the ball ends up, okay, if you know what foosball is, but there's a game, it's sort of like soccer on a table, but the ball sometimes will get where nobody can get it. Neither team can get to it, and you don't want that. You don't want, in this game, you don't want the cheese to be where the mouse can't get it. So I think I set it up where it's not going to go over here beyond, this is about 200 on the x-axis, I think. So it's not going to go beyond there. And then I think this is probably about, this space here is 140 on the y-axis. If you build your game and you find that you adjust your numbers and it's still falling outside, you can go back and adjust the numbers again. You can say, well, I need to make it a little less distance. Or if you want to just control where the cheese is going, if you only want it to go to a certain part of the game, like I could do this. I could say pick random, watch this, 160 to 0 and 220 to 0. Okay, now if we watch the game, now the mouse, excuse me, the cheese, remember the negative x is all over on the left side, and the negative y numbers are all in the bottom. So now the cheese is always going to go down in this section. It's not going to go any other part of the screen. So let's see if this makes sense to you. See, there it is. Now I'm going to go catch it. See, it stays right there in that bottom. Like that. So you see the cheese, when I redid the numbers, it stayed right here in this bottom left part of the screen. But I think it's better if the cheese goes all over the screen, but just not in this top and not in the far right. So I'm going to change these numbers back to where they were, to about 200, and we'll call this other one about 140. That way you can use the whole screen, but just not the spot where we were. I'm going to check time real quick, see how I'm doing. I'm doing good. All right. So that is changed the size of the cheese and also kind of altered where it can go. All right. So the next thing I want to do is, I talked about I'm going to add an enemy, and we'll show you how to add an enemy. So it works pretty well, and we're going to use what we just learned about spots, you know, finding a location on the screen to help us with this. So for this particular enemy, we're going to add another sprite. Choose a sprite. Remember this over here, this is the sprite box, the sprite section. And if I click on this, if I hover over this choose a sprite, I can go here and I can choose a specific sprite picture. And I need to find a beetle. I like that little beetle, he's cute. Alright, so now I have a new sprite and it's a beetle. Alright, so I'm going to build some code around that beetle. So I'm going to have an event, and when the green flag is clicked, first thing I want to do is I want to set the size to about let's say 25 degrees, or yeah, 25 degrees would be good. So real quickly, so you can see that when I click on the green button, see, it's going to be there, and it just appears there. Okay, now I know we talked previously about the music. If you like the music, you can keep it. If you want to change it, that's the beauty of making your own game. You can change the music, or you can have no music if you want. Okay, but we're back to the beetle, and we got him at 25%. And if you want him to start here, that's fine. But if you want him to go somewhere else, he can go somewhere else. And the way you do that is you say go to, we're going to have him go to, and you can pick any spot like we talked about. He can start at any spot on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to look here, and first thinking about the x-axis, I'd like him to be, instead of starting here, I want him to start like right in this general area. Okay, and so I can have him go to, and if I think about the x-axis, remember these are the negative numbers, and if you go all the way over here, this is negative 160. So I would guess, negative 220. The y-axis goes 160 to negative 160. X goes from negative 220 to 220. So I'm going to guess here is about negative 200 on the x-axis. And y, this is 0 on the y-axis, so if we're going up and down, I would say that is probably about 100 on the y-axis. About. Okay, and again, this is, you're kind of ballparking it. Let's see where he goes. Okay, yeah. He went about exactly where I want him to go, right? That's about 200. And so that beetle is exactly where I want him to go. Now I want him to point. Which direction do I want him to go? I want him to point in a 90-degree direction, and that means, let me make sure I'm telling you right. That means he's going to be facing to the right. Okay, the way directions work on this activity, if you're facing, you can see this here what I'm doing here. If you're facing straight up to the top, that's 0 degrees. If you're facing 90 degrees, that's straight to the right, like the beetle's looking right now. But let's say I want him to face straight down. That would be 180 degrees. If I want to face left, that'd be negative 90 degrees. Let's see what happens if I were to say that. I want to point that direction. And we start the game. See how he's facing the other way? You can control which way he's going to face. Okay, for this activity though, I want to say the beetle is facing to the right. So when I start it, he's facing that way, right? Okay, so then we got to do some, put in some code so the beetle starts moving. And so we use the control block, and we're going to say forever that beetle, first thing it's going to do is it's going to move 5 steps. It's just going to start moving. Okay, it's going to look like this. Okay, so all he's doing is he just keeps moving straight. Alright? But we can't just have, that's not going to make the beetle very useful if all it does is it starts and it just goes off the screen and it's gone. That's kind of boring. So we need it to move, and we need to do kind of like what we did with the mouse, where when it hits a wall it's going to stop. So we need to use the if if then button here, it moves 5 steps. If it's touching sprite 2, remember our maze, if it touches a wall, we find that sensing. If it's touching, what did I call it? Maze 2? Sprite 2. If it's touching sprite 2, then we're going to have the thing, we're going to have the beetle move 5 steps back. Actually not kind of like, exactly like what happened with the mouse. Remember when the mouse hits the wall, it backs up. Mouse hits the wall, it backs up. Same thing with this. When the beetle hits the wall, it backs up. Okay? And then we're going to have it turn. We're going to have it turn 90 degrees. Okay? So that means if the beetle hits the wall, it's going to turn right, and it's going to keep doing its thing, and it's going to keep turning until it gets somewhere. So we're going to run it now to see what happens with this beetle. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, see it moving over there? Now, you may have thought this. You say, well, that's not going to be good if the beetle just goes around circles, and you're thinking exactly what I'm thinking. So we have to do something that makes it so the beetle doesn't just go around circles, and there's a way to do that. We got to add something to the code, and we're going to use another if-then statement. We're going to put in a randomizer. Okay, so we have here, if the beetle touches the wall, it's going to move -5 steps, and then we're going to put in something else before it turns, and it's another if-then statement. So we're going to say if, let me pull this out, if, well, it can be okay. It can be right there. If, and this is a little tricky. We haven't done this before, so I haven't done it a lot either, but we're going to the operators, and we're going to say if something equals something else. We have to find a block that says if one thing equals something else, so it's going to be this shape here. If this equals 1, and all we're going to do is we're going to say, you know what, we want computer, we want you to pick a random number, either 1 or 2. So pick a random number from 1 to 2. If that random number equals 1, then the beetle is going to turn 90 degrees. Okay, and you know what? I think I put in the wrong thing. I did. So I messed up. I put in an if-then. I didn't need an if-then, to be honest with you. I messed up. So let me start over again and tell you right. We go to control thing, and it's actually going to say if, then else. So that means if it's this thing, then it does this, but if it's not, then it does something else. So we go here. So if, and we'll go back to operator, if something equals 1, then something's going to happen. So we're back to our random number, and all we're really saying is, okay, if the random number is 1, then we're going to do this. We're going to have it turn 90 degrees. Remember what 90 degrees looks like. Okay, if it's not 90, if it's not 1, so if it's 2, then, whoops, we're going to have it turn basically 90 degrees the other way. Okay, you see how on here it says it's going to move back 5 steps, and then it's going to be 1 or 2. If it's 1, it's going to turn 90 degrees this way. If it's not 1, it's going to turn 90 degrees the other way. So that means the beetle, it's going to give it a chance to not always do the exact same thing, and it's not going to get stuck in that square. So let's see what that looks like. See now, now it goes down here. Now today, what we're doing today, see this beetle? He doesn't affect the mouse at all, does he? Okay, so right now the beetle, he's just running around like that. And I'm going to check my time. Yeah, you know what? For today, I think we've done enough. Okay, but we got the beetle there. And now we see that that beetle moves all over the place. If we decide the beetle's going too fast, we can slow him down with steps. But for now, we're just going to leave it like that. Okay, so next time, we're going to look at just a couple things and probably finish this up. And the main things are going to be, we're going to show how to make it so the beetle also stops the game when it hits the mouse. And I think I'm going to try to add a high score block here, so you can play this numerous times and see if you get better at it. Okay, so for today though, what did we look at today? We looked at the cheese, and we said how can we make the cheese a different size, and we also changed the location of where it's going to land, so we wanted to make sure the cheese doesn't go outside the boundaries where the mouse can't get it. And we also added a beetle, and we made it so that beetle kind of runs, doesn't get stuck up in a corner. It's using random numbers to get it to move different ways. So I'm going to play this game one time before we finish up. And as usual, the ghost still goes through the walls, which is awesome for the ghost. He likes that. And you notice there, just now, the cheese was outside the block. I could, seeing that and saying, well, you know what, that cheese it went over a little too far. So I could say, you know what, I think 200 is too high. I'm going to make it like 180. That way I'm sure that it's not going to go over that far. Again, I could get to it the mouse. It probably doesn't. It is not going to keep the game from working, but it looks a little better to have it when the cheese falls inside the maze all the time. But with that, it's saved, everything's saved, and I'm going to wrap up for now, because to get anything else is going to take too long. This is a good length, so I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to come back later with part 5 that's going to show you again how to add some more beetles, how to make it so the game stops when the beetles hit it, and we're probably going to add a high score thing, and that's probably going to end it for the game. So thanks a lot for watching. If you haven't yet, check out my other coding videos. Y'all take care.